And we are live. Yes, this is Rise with Hope, and I'm your host, Aisha Nixon. Ladies, the Christmas season is here for those who celebrate. It's very easy to get stressed during this time for so many different reasons, and I am looking forward to chatting with our two guest speakers, Lyn Wade and Lori-Ann Dinnall, about how to have a stress-free Christmas. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome. So before we get into our discussion, Lorianne, can you tell us three things about who Lorianne is?
Well, I am a lover of books, and I also thoroughly enjoy a good plant-based culinary experience. And I can just luxuriate all day in healing conversations with like-minded individuals.
Thank you so much, Lorianne. Lynn, can you share three things about yourself?
Um, I like to listen to the same podcasts over and over and over again, at least 5 to 6 times. I love listening to podcasts, but I'm intentional about really, really listening. I don't really like big crowds. It's not my favorite. And I completely enjoy just going for long drives and just gazing and marveling at like open space and land and barren trees and mountains and sunrise and so forth. It's just such a surreal, healing sort of um, time alone.
That's great. That is great. Thank you both for sharing a little bit about who you are. And we're going to hear some more in regards to the stress-free Christmas and your perspective on that. And so let's get right into it. Lynn, can you name three stressors that women experience during the Christmas season and just talk briefly about each one?
Yeah, my gosh. I mean, the stressors are endless for women, right? Because we are the one, there's Santa Claus and then there's us, right? We both have big bags on our shoulders trying to distribute so many different things. So I think one of the stressors is just really sorting out what works best for us at Christmas. That's a stressor. The financial burden of that Christmas can bring, especially in the season that we're in with high interest rates and high the cost of food, gas prices, and then it can be triggering. Christmas is not always necessarily a happy time for some women. Loss of a loved one, their own life experience growing up. Christmas was not really a good thing for them. So those are the three things that I would think that kind of like come to mind for me that are huge stresses for women.
Thank you, Lynn. What about you, Lorianne?
I think oftentimes, even with the holidays, people still feel very pressed for time because in one respect, you're looking forward to time off if you're in a profession that's even going to allow you to have time off. But then it can feel like it's still just so short. You're already mourning it before you even had a vacation day. You're thinking of all the things that you have to do and all the places that you have to go during the holidays that you're like, when am I going to get some time for myself? And similar to Lynn's point there about just the many hats that women wear in families, whether we're mothers, sisters, daughters, we're always serving. We're often helpers and caregivers. And even in the frenzy of the holidays, it can feel like, oh God, like where is time for me just to get some downtime? So that can be a stressor. It's also time related. And then the idea of like, there's this pressure to live and spend beyond our means. So going beyond our capacity, both financially, but even like emotionally, where it's just like, the expenditure is so heavy. And that is stressful in and of itself, thinking of all the many ways you're being pulled in different directions and really coming apart at the seams.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing. And it's interesting how both of you were able to come up with three different stressors each, meaning there's so many that women experience. And so I want to go into Lori-Ann. Do you think it's possible to reduce or eliminate even those stressors that you mentioned during the Christmas season? And if so, how do you think that can happen?
I think planning is critical. You have to think in advance about what do I want my holiday season to look like? And then adjust your expectations accordingly, both for yourself, but also for those that you potentially will be spending the holidays with. So the family and friends that you normally interact with during Christmas time. If it's going to be different based upon the experiences of past years and what doesn't work for you, and you're now saying, okay, for this year, we're paring down what the holiday looks like. Then it's like you're setting a proper expectation for the day, but you've also given forethought. You've thought ahead about, I know how I felt in previous years, and I don't want to be feeling that way this year. And Lynn and I always joke and say, all else fails, you plan a vacation and get the heck out of there. And you say, you know what? I'm not worrying about no Christmas dinner. I'm not worrying about gifts and who's coming over. I'm out of here. And that is a strategy too.
Thank you, Lori-Ann. Lynn, what about you with the stressors that you mentioned? Is it possible to reduce them or even eliminate them? And how?
I think Christmas is a time to say no and not be a Scrooge. A lot of the times because no is kindness sometimes to your own self, right? And your sanity. And I used to do the endless Christmas list where I had to get something for this person and that person, this and that kid and this kid and da 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 da. And then at the end of the day, I was really not feeling very good about giving the gifts. There was a level of resentment because one, it's financially burdensome. And two, that's not even what I wanted to do anyways. So I think thinking about really what you want to give at Christmas, and thinking about the Advent season, hope, love, and peace. Think about one of those things that you want to focus on this Christmas and give into that. That's a good way to release stress. So for example, bacon. Instead of buying a whole bunch of gifts for people, have some friends over, bake some cookies, buy some really pretty dollar store cookie tins. And when you're finished baking the cookies, everybody gets to take some of those cookies home in a pretty tin. You provide some, drinks and so forth. It's very economical. It's fun. It's memorable. Lots of pictures. And it takes the burden off the finances as well. I think finances at Christmas time is really, really a stressor for everyone. And I think putting that on the table, saying to family members, listen, there are 12 kids in our family, and I would like for us to draw names and buy each kid a good gift with a dollar value. Again, taking this financial stress off of $1,200 and as opposed to $150. It's a huge difference, right? And also just checking in with your therapist. If you see somebody and that, the days are colder, it's darker, longer, it's heading towards that direction, and sadness is hovering. So maybe instead of having one session over the Christmas holidays, have two, really dig in, massage into those feelings so that you can release some pressure for yourself. So you yourself are not showing up resentful and angry during this, celebratory season, as we like to say. Yeah.
That's really great. Lynn and Lori-Ann, based on whether we reduce the stressors or even eliminate them. And they're practical, you know what I mean? They're doable. And so that's great. So ladies, I hope, you may have heard some of these ideas that both of the ladies have mentioned. You may want to try them, Another factor to having a stress-free Christmas is setting boundaries. Lori-Ann, what is the importance of setting boundaries before the Christmas season begins? And what does it look or sound like?
Setting boundaries is vitally important, especially during the Christmas season, for all of the reasons we mentioned before, just the various stressors that are pulling us in these different directions.
Mm-hmm.
I love what Lyn was saying there about the power, employing the power of no.
Yes.
And so what that might look like for us during the holidays is, no, I'm not able to do that. I'm going to delegate that to someone else. So whether that's even the Christmas Day menu itself, which we talk about every year, becoming like this monster where you tell yourself initially, I'm only going to put out 5 dishes. And then you find yourself putting out 14. And then you're stressed and you're discombobulated. Good, safe boundaries looks like saying, you know what? You're going to bring the roast beef. You're going to bring the oxtail, and I'm only going to do the corn and set the table. And like just delegating is part of putting those boundaries in place. I also think sometimes distancing, and it's kind of an unpopular viewpoint, but I think that people should give themselves permission to really do the holidays on their own terms. Be very honest, especially about what's happening with you emotionally, physically, financially, and be very real about, how do I want this holiday to look and feel differently than the years where I have shown up resentful or I have felt overburdened or overextended. I don't want my holidays synonymous with those kinds of negative emotions. So how can I create a little bit of distance where sometimes that no, Aisha, might look like, I'm not going to the big dinner where I have stress and strife with several family members, unfortunately, and it's not good for my mental well-being for me to force myself to eat at a table where love is not being served. So it might look like distance, where I'm going to stay home and do something small, maybe with some friends at my home, which is a lot more peaceable for me than being at the big family to do, where there's already going to be some bad feeling and angstiness in the air. And then lastly, I would say, it might look like designations, like in terms of not just the financial budget that Lyn touched on there, where it's like having a Christmas budget so that you don't go crazy, because 2 you blink and you spent $2,000 and you didn't mean to. So I think that's also managing your energy budget as well. I only have this many days off. I am going to do diligence to make sure I cannot say yes to every appointment.
Yeah.
Every friend that wants to get together for tea during the holidays, every family member that wants you to come to their house for dinner, I'm going to have to say no to a few of these things so that I can have a few days of quiet time, or perhaps just spending it with your immediate family, doing nothing at home, but just enjoying each other's company. So for me, the setting boundaries, it's vitally important, because apart from it, you will run yourself ragged and you'll be looking back saying, how did I get here?
It's true. And then, like you said, you end up having these negative emotions and energy, right? Where other people will be able to feel it. You're not happy. And then, like you said, it just doesn't work for you, and it won't work for others who are around you either, right?
Yeah.
Lyn, what about you? Setting boundaries. What's the importance of that for you?
I think it's super important. It's very interesting. I have noise sensitivity, meaning that I can take noise only for so long. I have to have downtime. So one of the boundaries that I set is that if I'm doing Christmas morning breakfast with like the extended family and stuff, I'm not going to be doing Christmas dinner with the extended family. Or if I'm doing Christmas dinner, I'm not going to be doing Christmas breakfast, because I need that recuperating time. It's really, really valuable for me, because you're pouring out so much. You're pouring out, wrapping the gifts, doing the grocery shopping, doing so many things. And then you still have to show up jolly and merry. And I think Christmas is about being honest. It's about being hopeful. It's about, spreading love. It's about living at peace, not just within yourself, but with others. So I think you really, really set those boundaries by saying, what can I do? What do I have capacity for? I remember one Christmas, my kids like 3 things on the menu. They like spiral ham, macaroni pie, and cornbread. And Christmas dinner was spiral ham, macaroni pie, cornbread, and a salad. And that was it. There was nothing else on the table. And listen, it was the best Christmas. It was because it was what we wanted, is what we wanted Christmas to look like.
Mhm.
And the last thing I would say with setting boundaries, don't take notes from social media. Those are not places in which you can set some healthy boundaries, because people are doing different things for different reasons. And you do not have what they have, the capacity. And you just don't want to expose yourself to be compared with what somebody's Christmas table looks like in as opposed to what yours. Listen, if some fried dumplings and codfish and ackee and saltfish is what works for you on Christmas Day, you do that, because that's what Christmas is for you. So setting boundaries is also maybe even turning social media off and just really getting into, family and fellowship, and not so much competition and, all of the anxieties that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lyn and Lori-Ann, these were great, what would I say, like just great reasons and also examples of what setting boundaries can look like and what it can sound like as well. And just the importance, as was mentioned, the power of no, managing one's energy, not comparing ourselves to what people are doing on social media and all the pics that they put, creating your own experiences, and asking yourself, what do I have capacity for? It's
Mhm.
so important. And I think what also we need to remember is when we set boundaries, other people may be upset about that. Isn't that true?
Oh,
Very
yeah.
much so. People
So
don't like it when you say no, but you get to learn something about them in the process. How they respond to your no lets us know, where the respect lies.
that's so
Yeah.
true. That's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah. And you can also leave the conversation with like, this is probably going to be an uncomfortable ask this year, because I know we normally do this, but really and truly, for my mental and emotional health, I think I have to choose one, and I'll show up better if I choose one in as opposed to doing both. And I think sometimes when you present things like that, it's so funny. You'll say things like that to somebody who you would expect so much resistance, and then they would say something to you like, girl, yeah, I was feeling the same thing. Oh my God. And you're like,
Mhm.
for real? So I had to like pay $254 to see my therapist, to come up with the language, to tell you what I'm honestly feeling, only to find out that you're feeling the same thing. All right, I'm going
Precisely.
to ask for half price next time. That's all.
Hmm.
Do you know? So sometimes people are feeling the same thing,
It's
but they
true.
don't
Yeah.
have the language to
Yeah.
say, oh, I need to.
Yeah. In addition to the language, it's you don't want to also it's about people pleasing too.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Right?
Very much so.
What will people think of me if whatever the case might be. So I think some people may have to make that decision or that choice, and yeah, you may not get the response that you want, but again, it's for yourself and just setting the boundaries.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And so it was mentioned that protecting downtime, because I know, Lyn, you were saying that if you're gonna be with the extended family for making breakfast, then dinner you won't be there, right? And so talk to us about, you may have another idea in terms of protecting our downtime. In addition to that, does it look what does it look like to you?
Yeah, when and full transparency, Christmas has not always been my happy time. I actually I think this will probably be my first year that I can say that I like Christmas. But prior to this year, I Christmas is actually quite depressing for me. It used to be.
Mhm.
Um, you know, my family are not always around. My extended family, I family in the US, just my own experience growing up with Christmas. So it is very triggering for me at Christmas time, and protecting my peace. I had learned to first admit that, this is not my favorite time of the year.
Mhm.
So having intervals of downtime is really, really important. It's kind of like sometimes if your car is not working really well, you got to kind of like let it rest for a little while. So like, the oil and everything it's kind of like our souls and our minds during the holidays that, if there's 7 engagements to go, pick three that you can kind of get the best of everybody and rest out the four.
Yeah.
It's so important. For me, it was so important to even like have a language of understanding during the Christmas season that it wasn't. Whereas this year, I'm not like, oh, I can't wait for Christmas. It's a peaceful can't wait for Christmas. I'm really enjoying the season of Christmas and I'm taking my time with it. It's like a baby that's learning to walk again. I'm walking with an understanding that I might stagger a little bit because I haven't fully mastered the art of walking, but I know what I can hold on to. I know where I can rest. I know where I can sit down. I know where I can crawl. So I think protecting your downtime is also allowing you those seasons where you might not be walking steady. You might have to crawl to some things, but slow it down so you will know when to do each. Because part of maturing is also knowing where your hiccups are. So your downtime really helps you with those digestive issues.
Yeah, nice analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Lori-Ann? Protecting our downtime.
I think for me, not even just at the holiday time, but just in general throughout the year, especially in times where you're feeling a little, I call it, just very emotionally raw. Perhaps there's a lot happening, kind of just simmering under the surface, and you're feeling like I need a little timeout. I think plugging out is very important. So plugging out of whether that's social media, quieting your notifications on your phone. I find very much like Lyn as well, that, as we continue to grow and mature and really just embrace the fullness of who we are as women at this, life stage, I am very sensitive to too much noise. And so this idea of like, okay, what is within your control? So really kind of quieting those shoulds. So like I have even like a personal philosophy of like, if I go to dinner with a friend, I don't necessarily put my phone on the table because where I am is where I want to be. So if I carved out this time to be with this individual, there's only maybe one or two people's phone calls that are actually important to me. So the phone doesn't need to be out because I want to be able to give that undivided attention. So how much more so during the holidays when we're having this key time of, synchronized days off with loved ones. It's like, if we're just Netflix and chilling and eating leftovers throughout the holidays, I want to be fully present with family. I want to savor the laughter of my grandkids. I want to be able to binge watch whatever my stepdaughter wants to watch. Like, I don't want to be trying to multitask. So really wanting to be intentional about like, be where your feet are, be present. And for me, that's part of protecting your downtime, is that you're saying, if this is what we've purposed to do as a family for downtime, or even as an individual, even if you're just watching TV on your own, but you're just saying, I really have been looking forward to watching this series all year. And I felt guilty all year about binge watching it, not during Christmas week. I'm going to get through it. And that means I'm putting my phone down and I'm not playing with my device while I'm watching the show. I'm really watching the show. And like we had said just even a moment ago there about just leaving margin on your calendar, because I think even just as women of God, really wanting to be flexible, like, God, how would you have me to even just serve and minister to those that I may come in contact with during the holidays? And you may have a relative that you haven't connected with in a long time and they extend themselves during the holidays. And if something is booked every single day, would there be space for you to entertain that person? Meanwhile, that's actually the assignment.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to, protecting downtime is also leaving yourself available to whoever God may be leading you to spend time with during the holidays, being even aware of those around you that may need a place to even like stay during the holidays, or invite someone to come over to have dinner with your family during the holidays. Part of that is to me, just even being sensitive to the rhythms of like where Holy Spirit is leading us in this season. So yeah, I think it's important to make sure that we've left margin, that it's not so full that there's no room for anything else.
Lyn and Lori-Ann, these are great points that you mentioned in terms of protecting our downtime, knowing our hiccups, and as we grow mature, as Lyn was saying, and being able to, I would say, like, have grace for ourselves in, as Lyn was saying, learning how to walk again through being at peace with the Christmas season, right? And so just having grace upon yourself, realizing, okay, it may not be like how it was before, it may be like this way, but that's okay, right? Plugging out, leaving margin on our calendar, and being intentional. These are great ideas for protecting our downtime. And lastly, it was mentioned about connection. So I'm going to ask both of you, Lyn, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is connection to you, especially during the Christmas season? And talk about it.
Connection is actually like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's definitely 11 for me. I am much more into connection than the commercial presentation of Christmas. I do it throughout the year, but coming around Christmas time is where I get to like refocus, where I can kind of say, you know what, especially when I was in sort of celebratory with the Christmas, I would find like people that I haven't seen for a long time and go spend time with them, like invest in them, bring joy to them, because then that brings joy to me. So I love to do, like go cook with a girlfriend, or go to the Christmas markets, or find a little shop in a little area that nobody knows about, and we have a one-on-one conversation. I am really, connection is my heartbeat.
Yeah.
And even when I am not connected to the season that we're in, I'm connected with the people in the season.
Yeah.
And so that's really what it's like my lifeline. That's really where I get a high. So connection for me throughout the year is important, but particularly at Christmas time, because I know that everybody carries the seasons differently.
Yeah.
And if instead of sharing the sadness of the season, we can find joy and be reminded that we have each other, and that super exceeds anything that could be under a Christmas tree.
Yes.
So connection is definitely an 11 for me in my heartbeat.
Thank you, Lyn.
Yeah.
What about you, Lori-Ann?
It's up there. Yeah, it's in that. I give it a good 9. And I think even as I was listening to Lyn talk there, the importance, yes, of connecting with others. But I would also add to that the idea of the holiday season is a great opportunity to also connect with ourselves, right? It's not just about Christmas, but we're on the cusp of a new year. So it's always a time of being rather pensive, looking back on the year that's transpired, and then looking with anticipation, hopefully, for the year that's about to come. And so I think that it's important for us to have spaces to be able to connect with ourselves and connect with God within us, in terms of getting those instructions for how is the coming year going to be different as we close out this year. I know there's always an emphasis on finishing strong, but what about finishing with this graciousness and this gentleness towards ourselves, self-compassion about, you know what, girl, you done good to the best of your ability this year. We went through some hills and valleys, but we here. And then really taking that same mood into the new year. So I think it's important, definitely, to connect with your loved ones, but almost equally, if not more so important, for us to be in connection with ourselves and in connection with the one who made us and loves us.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think sometimes the success in the year is just completing the task at hand, right? Sometimes we, as Lauren was just talking about, it's just like, I'm finished. God gave me a mandate for something at the beginning of the year, and the success was carrying it out. You know what I mean? And not necessarily how many applause that we've gotten, not even necessarily, how many, but that you started something and that you finish it. And the benefits of it will show up later, or it may not show up, but to God, it's the obedience, and the success comes in just carrying out whatever it is that has been assigned. So, it's just deep, especially Lauren was just pondering for the new year. It's also a good time to just kind of like sit in that place as well, and just connect with, have I finished what I started? And the good book, the scripture reminds us that this race is not for the swift. It's an enduring race. It's for those that will make it to the end. And so we're grateful for end results equal success, right?
This is really good, Lyn and Lori-Ann. Good reflection questions, and also good in the sense that just being able to see what we have accomplished throughout the year, you know what I mean? And as Lori-Ann said, to be gracious to ourselves. And Lynn, as you were mentioning about like the success in carrying out the task and whatever it is, because a lot of times it's easy to start, but it's not always easy to finish for many different reasons, you know. And I wanted to ask you, you've shared so much like nuggets and valuable counsel. What are your top two tips for both of you that can help us have a stress-free Christmas? Out of everything you've mentioned, or maybe something that you haven't mentioned yet, tell us your top two. And I
I
go
would,
to you.
yeah,
Yep.
I would say find time to be silly and be filled with laughter. Like find some girlfriends, book a restaurant, and laugh scandalously. Clap your hands, tilt your head back, and laugh. Order some good food.
Mhm.
And when you're finished, give each other some good embrace and take a selfie and keep it in your phone to remind you of how good life is in spite of all the things that are going on. That would be, there's a couple in there, but it's like it all ends up with a good selfie in your phone.
Awesome. Thank you for your tips, Lynn. Lori-Ann?
Stress-free Christmas. I would say savor the moments, like by being like really, really present. It's almost like take a load off of yourself so that in the midst of the dishes in the sink and the kids running in the house, or the pumpkin pie didn't come out right, like whatever's happening, just really take it all in. Take it all in, not take it all on, but take it all in terms of just really being grateful that it's like, whether you're celebrating with one person or 10 people, be grateful that it's like, we have health and we have food and we have shelter and we have even one other person that decided to break bread with me here today. Just savor that, because so many people don't even have one of those 10 things that you have going on. And so I think that gratitude is the greatest response to the stressors, is to say, how can I be fully present and fully thankful and appreciative for that which is happening here in our crazy, busy, nuts kind of family life? How can I just enjoy it while it's unfolding rather than giving myself a hard time about it?
Mm-hmm. Awesome, ladies. And I want to end with this final question as we wrap up. And remembering Jesus Christ as the reason for the Christmas season. How do we keep Jesus Christ at the center of all that we do as we prepare for and celebrate Christmas? Lori-Ann?
Keeping Christ central. I think this whole idea of like God so loved that he gave, and it's not really about the giving of the gifts, but it's the giving of ourselves and the receiving of these gifts, right? Like these intangible gifts. So when we think about the love that is shared and the pleasantries that are exchanged and the generosity that we experience, that ultimately all of that is a reflection and a depiction of the greatest gift of all, the ultimate gift, which is Jesus himself. And so I think during the holiday season, for us to really keep that central, that it's not really about the presents and Santa Claus, but that it's really about the gifts that we give each other, these pieces that you can't even quite put your finger on. That's the stuff of life that actually matters. And I think the more we talk about those things, the more it becomes evident that it's like Christ is all in all.
Thank you, Lori-Ann. Lynn?
I was thinking of the story of Mary and Elizabeth. And the scripture said that when Mary had gone to visit Elizabeth, Jesus was still in her womb. And there was a leap in, there was this witness of life.
Mhm.
And I think about the life of Christ, and you know, Christmas, we focus a lot on the baby Jesus and the beginning of Jesus, but Christmas is really the full circle and the hope that that baby brought on the cross.
Mhm.
And especially in the season that we're in right now, where there's so many things that are going on, like the cost of living, you know, all kinds of disasters. We turn on the television and our hearts are broken day after day after day. And I think about Christ in Christmas and I say, God, let the hope that Mary felt when you moved in her womb, when it was almost like Jesus was bearing witness with John in Elizabeth, let that come alive for us. Let us feel the movement of your love.
Mm.
Let us be touched by it. Let us be moved by it. Let it be a part of all that we do, so that we can be a witness of the hope that he brings. So to me, this Christmas is really about the hope that Jesus brings. You know, I think Barack Obama wrote a book, The Audacity of Hope.
Mm.
You know, I think that audacity was in Mary's womb. And we now get to live that out and be hopeful, knowing that he's no longer a baby, but he died and he rose, so that at this season, this time of the year, we can hope again, we can live again, we can dream again. And oh, the magic of believing again. In the middle of all of the madness, we get to believe again. So the audacity of hope.
What a way to end tonight's episode. Lyn, Wade, and Lori-Ann Dinnall, thank you so much for taking the time for sharing with us about how to have a stress-free Christmas, about realizing about the reason for the season, Jesus Christ, giving, loving, and having hope. And so, ladies, thank you for joining. We are so glad that you were able to be a part and just hearing what Lori-Ann and what Lyn had to share. And this is the last episode of 2022. So I want to say Merry Christmas to all of those who are watching. And in the new year, we'll start again. And I just want to say, ladies, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to Rise with Hope. Till next time, see you later.